Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. The journey to healing and self-acceptance healing is usually a difficult one, but it's harder to recover when the hurt and damage is from someone you love and trust. I, 35 female, am fat. I have added excess weight and I'm out of shape. I see these flaws every time I look in the mirror, and I struggle with them. Childbirth ruined my body. I do not believe childbirth ruined my body, but my husband, male 40, does. And he throws how big I've become since the birth of my second child in my face at every opportunity that he gets. It's been barely 5 months since the birth of my child, and I've been trying my best to get back in shape. But it's been difficult, especially since my pregnancy was strenuous. Barely a week after my child's birth, Stephen, my husband, brought home a bunch of weight loss pills, saying he wasn't comfortable or pleased with having an obese wife around. I told him I couldn't take the pills because I was breastfeeding and I had to be cautious with what I take, and besides, I would be back in shape in a short time. He responded saying he couldn't wait that long. I ignored him, knowing a lot was going to happen because of my weight. I came back from the hospital one particular day to find out that he has reformed our baby's room into a gym and moved our baby's belongings into our older child's room. It didn't sit well with me, especially since I was not informed about the decision, but I tried to yield to his desires. He woke me up early every morning to engage in his strenuous workout routine. I followed his routine, but he was pushing me too hard. Not only that, the time which we used in working out was usually filled with him throwing demoralizing insults at me. I finally put my feet down and said I wouldn't work out with him anymore, because every day my self-esteem took a hit from his brutal and hurtful words, and I was only getting weaker because my body had not fully recovered. Due to that, his attitude became worse. When I eat, he says hurtful words. When I walk, he says I'm waddling like a duck. When I want to go out, he asks me not to go out because my body embarrasses him. My marriage has practically turned into a bed of thorns. What is worse is that he makes all these hurtful comments in front of my eldest child, who is 9 years old. 3 months after the birth of my child, I already lost a little weight, but it didn't make so much difference compared to how I looked before pregnancy. My in-laws came around for dinner at our house and to probably meet our baby, since they couldn't come around when I had my child. It seemed like just a dinner, but I was already nervous because my in-laws can be quite a handful, but my husband had always helped me stand my ground against them. But this dinner was different because it left me feeling shattered. For every spoonful of food I took, there was an accompanying comment about how much fat I had become and how much weight I had gained. My husband only supported them. He said I had become so fat, ugly, and out of shape because I was lazy and I was not doing anything about it. I left dinner in tears, with my Charles, 9 male, in my hands. My elder child had witnessed the whole drama. Things became more tense in the house after the dinner. We practically became strangers. He moved out of our shade room and started sleeping in the guest room. I walked on eggshells around him in the house. Baggy tops had become my new favorite clothes because it hid how big I had become and all the stretch marks on my body. I started to dislike my body. I finally resorted to weight loss pills my husband dumped on me, and I spent more time in the gym. I desperately wanted to save my marriage and I was ready to give it all I had. Besides, it wouldn't have hurt to have my former body back. I was making slow progress and I could see changes in my body. I kept hoping it would bring my husband back to me and restore our love. But we grew further apart. It hurts. I was so close to resenting my baby. Reddit, I'm finally talking about this after suffering for so long in silence, after realizing I might have married a cruel man after all. Yesterday was Charles's graduation ceremony from his class, and he was going to perform a piano recital. I had been planning for the event for so long, especially since I wanted to see him play on stage, and all parents were invited. I was glad we could go out as a family again. I hoped the event would bring me and Stephen closer again. Stephen asked me to go touch up my makeup because it had stained. I went to the room. When I was done, I tried opening the door, but it wouldn't open. I pushed it, turned and hit it, but the door wouldn't open. Minutes later, I heard Steven's car zoom off. It was then I realized he had locked me in. I called him over and over again, but he did not pick my calls. We had dropped my baby off with my parents, so it was only me at home, locked in a room. After a few hours with no response from him, I started sending numerous texts to him. He finally responded with just a sentence. "I can't go out with you. Your body embarrasses me." Immediately he got back. I didn't let him off easily. I confronted him. He had so many unpleasant things to say about my body and to justify his actions, and I recorded him this time. Reddit, I have video evidence and screenshots of chats of my husband fat-shaming me. What should I do? Update. Thank you for your advice and support. It's been a while since I made an update, but a lot has changed. After having conversations with my husband about his actions, nothing changed. He didn't apologize or act better. To be honest, it became worse, but by then I had gathered enough chats and recordings. I sent them all to my social media pages detailing the abuse that I had suffered in his hands. Then I filed for a divorce. I'm pleased to announce that as of today, I'm no longer married to my husband. I have custody of my 2 children and half of our properties. I will focus on healing, getting fit, and restoring my self-esteem. I'm sorry you had to go through this, OP. You deserve way better than your ex-husband, and I'm glad you're finally rid of him. He was toxic to you and he created a very toxic environment for your children too. He's an a-hole for being embarrassed about your body when it just birthed a whole human being. I recommend you go for therapy to unlearn everything he has said to you and made you believe. Go to the gym if you want to, and only if it would help you love and treat yourself better. Story 2. I live in a pretty small town. So if you don't know somebody directly, you're likely to know a person who knows them, and this is pretty much biting me in the ass right now. My husband and I are looking to upgrade homes given we're planning on expanding our family. So we've been looking at a few open houses recently. About a week ago, we were at an open house when our daughter, 4, wandered off and picked up this mask-type thing laying out on a table. Super bright, very loud, apparently very fragile, and pretty much right out in the open. When I saw her touching it, I told her to put it down, but it was too late, and somehow it had gotten cracked down the middle. Now I'm not sure if it was already broken and they had left it out as some sort of trap, because who leaves something bright like that lying around during an open house with children walking around? Or if she did anything. But I felt extremely embarrassed and grabbed my daughter and told my husband it was time to leave. A so-called friend of mine who knows the house owner saw me there and apparently told her she saw me rushing out of her house on the same day she returned to find the mask broken. Now she's hitting me up on the phone demanding I pay her back for breaking art and naming an absolutely ludicrous price. Think 4 figures. I'm absolutely not going to pay her that. But a few people I know think I'm in the wrong here. I personally think if you're having an open house that children will be visiting, you don't leave expensive breakables out in the open. I also do not believe for a second that that thing was worth thousands of dollars. And if it was, I think there is a very good chance she broke it herself, then left it lying around to pin it on someone else and guilt some money out of them. Who's the a-hole here? You're the a-hole, OP. Because of the way you are totally in denial about how it isn't your fault. Just because it is an open house doesn't mean they have to child-proof the home. You are supposed to be watching your child. Anything your child breaks is your responsibility, just like in a store. It's really unfortunate that the mask costs so much, and I don't know if I would personally pay them what they are asking. But I do think you owe them something, so try to think of just what you can afford. But it isn't zero. And it should be accompanied by a heartfelt apology. Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. Sorry. You should have had a closer eye on your kid. With the left out as some sort of trap thing, you're reaching. The art was left out by someone who didn't think people would pick it up during an open house. It's also not the homeowner's job to guess that an unsupervised child might touch their belongings. Was it smart of them to leave something precious on the table? I guess not. Could this have just as easily been broken by an adult at the open house? Sure. And an adult would be expected to pay for it. You're so hard on this one, sister. I have a feeling you know very, very well your daughter broke some very expensive piece of art, and you're acting entitled just to get out of it. The homeowner is still the homeowner and can leave his or her expensive art pieces to attract possible clients wherever she or he pleases. You literally stepped on someone's property. Your kid breaks something and now you're bitching about them being responsible. You sound very, very entitled. Don't bring your kid on someone else's property if you can't be responsible enough to watch her and make sure she doesn't break things. You're the a-hole. You were in someone's home and it was on you to watch your kid. Otherwise, whatever she breaks is your responsibility. Get a toddler harness or something. Also, why did you just leave without even trying to apologize? It's also very unlikely that a woman trying to sell her house left out something that was broken, hoping a kid would handle it and then she could hit people with the bill. It's way more likely she was displaying something nice because it made the house look posh. The way people put fresh flowers in a house they're trying to sell, and your kid broke it. Story 3. Me, 30 female, and my wife, 29 female, welcomed our son into this world a year ago. Both of our families are very accepting of us, but my wife's family has this weird obsession with passing on the family genes, which made adopting out of the question very early on. Me and my wife have always wanted to start a family, but things got difficult when my wife found out she was infertile. We knew her family would be understanding, but I am terrified of pregnancy. From what I've been told, I'm almost physically identical to my biological mom, who died during childbirth. So that has led me to believe I wouldn't hold a pregnancy very well. After a few months of brainstorming and let down, mother-in-law suggested that we do IVF, using my eggs and my brother-in-law's sperm, and let my wife carry the baby. I was skeptical at first but gave in because the plan hit all marks. Her family got their genes passed on. My wife and I got to start a family, and I don't have to carry the baby. We went through extensive counseling and therapy to make sure everyone was on the same page and could handle it. The procedure was a bit expensive, but my wife's grandma happily covered the cost, since our baby would be the first of the new generation in their family. Everything went great. My wife loved being pregnant, aside from the morning sickness, and we were more than overjoyed to welcome our baby boy in the winter. The problem arose last week when we were preparing for my son's first birthday when brother-in-law made a comment about how he should get a say in the planning as the child's father. I was shocked. I cringed and told him that he wasn't. He just provided the sperm. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Yeah, so he's our child." I looked at my wife, whose mouth was wide open, and mother-in-law wasn't making eye contact. Before he could say anything else, I demanded that he get out of my house and that he would be able to come to the party when he apologized. He got angry but left when my wife started to cry. My wife has always struggled with self-esteem, and her infertility really took a toll on her. For months, I had to constantly reassure her that she was an amazing mother and that she wasn't wrong. She faced a lot of homophobia and misogyny growing up. Sister-in-law called me later that day and called me a bitch. I argued that brother-in-law had no right saying any of that, but sister-in-law just kept yelling. Me and my wife have cut all contact with the family. It's turned into something bigger than it needs to. But I refuse to let someone call my family incomplete again. Call me dramatic, but I grew up with family in and out and never knowing who is real family, and I refuse to let the same happen to my son. Brother-in-law signed away his rights and verbally agreed multiple times that he's just an uncle. He's never had a problem until now, and it's kinda out of the blue. If he was starting to feel more of a connection to my son, then I would understand if he calmly spoke to my wife and I, instead of staking a claim. I've reached out to brother-in-law a few times looking for a reason, but he has just thrown insults at my wife and I. My wife is devastated over losing contact, but neither of us want to forgive brother-in-law until he apologizes. So am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. No a-holes here. I know a man who did the same thing for close friends but felt a lot of regret after being around the child. It really messed with his head, and they have no contact with him now. He still goes around talking about his kid he wants custody of, but he signed away his rights for life. I'm convinced that nobody should use someone they know for a sperm donation because they can't promise how they will feel about it later on. It's instinct. This is a non-issue with an anonymous donor. I understand eventually telling the kid they're made through IVF, but I 100% recommend cutting complete contact with brother-in-law, while also being ready to cut others he may convince to take actions for him. Most likely either his wife or your sister-in-law. If he's trying to stake claim over a kid that isn't his and he signed his rights away, then it's guaranteed that he's gonna try to go behind your back to convince your kid that, hey, I'm actually your father, but they won't actually let me be. If you continue allowing them to interact, also be ready to defend yourself for any legal proceedings he or they may take against you. Not the a-hole. You were right in what you said that he was a literal sperm donor. He signed away any parental rights, and that includes being called father. I would email them reiterating this and make clear that this is a boundary they cannot cross. Ensure they know that at a later date, their child will know who was the person to give a sperm to enable them to have a family, so long as they are agreeable. But beyond that, their say and opinions are not relevant, and brother-in-law will not be playing a parental role in the child's life at any stage, and that this was agreed before the event and will not legally or otherwise change. Set out the boundaries you need, and they can either go with them or not be involved.